Carlos Santana's life is a journey shaped by pain, genius, rebellion, and redemption. Born on July 20, 1947, in the dusty village of Atlandi, Navarro, Jalisco, Mexico, he grew up in poverty, surrounded by music but burdened by expectations. His father Jose was a mariachi violinist who demanded precision and discipline from his children. Believing music was a matter of survival, Carlos was handed a violin at age 5, but while he practiced his father's traditional songs, he was secretly drawn to the electric sounds drifting from American radio stations, B.B. King, T-Bone Walker, Little Richard. At 8 years old, he switched to guitar, and something awakened inside him. Music became more than notes. It became freedom, but that freedom didn't protect him from the darkest chapter of his childhood. Between ages 10 and 12, an American man who pretended to help his family abused him. He brought toys, smiles, and false kindness. Leaving Carlos with shame, he carried in silence for decades. When his parents found out, they didn't know how to handle it, and Carlos buried it so deeply that the trauma twisted the rest of his life. Years later, he said forgiveness saved him, but the damage stayed. By 1955, the family had moved to Tijuana full-time. Life was loud, dangerous, and unforgiving. Carlos played violin beside his father at fiestas but lived with constant conflict between tradition and the blues-fueled dream inside him. At 12, he became a roadie for Javier Batiz and later joined his band, switching to bass because Batiz already played lead. He absorbed Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry, Howlin' Wolf, and James Brown. Home life was harder. In 1961, when Carlos was 14, his father left for San Francisco to find work. Carlos supported the family by playing on street corners, scavenging car parts, and even getting arrested for petty theft, just a kid trying to feed his siblings. When his mother took the $300 he had saved washing dishes to pay rent and dental bills, leaving him only $20, he ran away to Tijuana. He played in strip clubs, survived off tips, lived alone among violence, prostitution, and gangs, sharpening his guitar into a voice that carried all his pain. His family eventually found him and dragged him back. By 15, he dropped out of school, returned to the strip clubs willingly, and played for $2 or $3 a set. His first brush with marijuana came behind one of those clubs. Drugs became part of the world he lived in. In 1963, he reunited with his family in San Francisco. At first he hated it. It was cold, foreign, nothing like Tijuana's chaos, so he went back and forth, until he finally settled in the Bay Area in 1965. He washed dishes at the Tickmock Drive-In for $1.25 an hour, slept there sometimes, and played music anywhere he could. San Francisco was a musical universe where blues, jazz, folk, and Latin collided. He became a U.S. citizen that year. In 1966, he formed the Santana Blues Band with David Brown and Greg Rowley. They played tiny clubs, fought constantly, broke up, reformed, and kept evolving. In 1967, he took LSD for the first time and felt as if his guitar spoke to him. That was when promoter Bill Graham discovered them and booked them at the Fillmore West. Graham believed in Santana more than Santana believed in himself. He pushed him through panic and stage fright, shaping the band's sound and future. By 1969, they were signed to Columbia Records, but drugs were creeping in. Carlos missed sessions. The label nearly dropped them. Somehow, he pulled himself together in time for their debut album. Just weeks before it was released, Santana played Woodstock. Carlos had taken mescaline, thinking he had hours before his set, but suddenly he was told to go on stage. His guitar twisted in his hands like a snake, the world vibrating, but he played anyway. 45 minutes of chaotic, electric power turned him into a legend. After collapsing backstage, he swore he'd never perform high again, though he didn't keep the promise. Their debut album sold over 4 million copies. In 1970, Abraxas exploded across the world, spent 6 weeks at #1, and sold over 5 million copies. But cracks were already widening. Cocaine spread through the band like wildfire during the making of Santana 3. Rehearsals collapsed. Carlos tried to take control, threatening to cancel tours. On stage in Japan, he hallucinated demons and smashed his guitar. That breakdown marked the start of deeper personal reckoning. In 1992, 16-year-old Neil Shan joined the band, sparking both brilliance and chaos. Their rivalry led to explosive music and explosive arguments. That same year, Santana released Caravanserai, a spiritual, jazzy shift that confused fans. Many turned away. Greg Rowley and Neil Shan left soon after. What fans didn't know was that Carlos had started therapy and had finally begun talking about the abuse he'd suffered as a child, the thing that haunted him and shaped his entire life. In 1973, his world changed again when John McLaughlin introduced him to Indian spiritual teacher Sri Ch. Santana gave up drugs and alcohol, renamed himself Devadip, and devoted himself to meditation. But Chinmoy demanded creative control. disapproved of rock music, and gradually isolated Carlos from friends and bandmates. Carlos donated $150,000 to the Guru's community, over $1 million today, and urged his band to practice celibacy while secretly breaking the rules himself. In 1982, Chinmoy banished him with a vicious letter, calling him an ignorant seed runner. Followers were ordered to cut him off. Losing the community felt like losing a family. His marriage to Deborah King had begun in 1974, and for a time, it grounded him. But fame, touring, spiritual pressure, and guilt twisted his life. She found letters from his affairs just 2 years into their marriage. They stayed together, but the wounds lingered. Through the late 70s, his music shifted toward jazz and spiritual fusion. Fans drifted away, and so did his sense of direction. By 1978, depression almost killed him. He attempted suicide multiple times, carried the trauma of his childhood in silence, and felt trapped in a life that wouldn't let him breathe. In therapy, he finally said out loud what had happened to him at age 10, that an American man in Tijuana had abused him for 2 years under the guise of helping the family. The early 80s were brutal. Coke had scarred his voice. He relapsed, missed tours, lost money, and his label dropped him. Affairs became tabloid fodder. His marriage fractured under the weight of betrayal. He was lost spiritually after Sri Chinmoy cast him out. By 1987, he turned to Kabbalah, lighting candles during long studio nights, trying to rebuild his soul. His albums struggled. By 1994, a mild heart attack and rehab forced him to confront the years of damage. His career stalled, albums barely charted. MTV rejected him, calling his image too ethnic. By the mid-90s, his marriage was falling apart again. Deborah filed for divorce after years of infidelity. He apologized publicly in his album liner notes. In 1998, financial disaster almost destroyed him when Lauryn Hill didn't show up for the sessions of his new project and studio costs skyrocketed. But from that chaos came Supernatural. Released in 1999, it sold over 30 million copies worldwide. Smooth dominated the charts for 12 weeks. He won 9 Grammys in one night, tying Michael Jackson. He spoke about survivors of abuse during his speech, his voice steady but full of memories. Maria Maria became another #1 hit. Even then, controversies followed, lawsuits, arguments, firings, but nothing stopped the wave. He divorced Deborah in 2007 and married drummer Cindy Blackman in 2010. They created new music together, but age, exhaustion, and years of physical wear finally caught up. In July 2022, at 75, Carlos collapsed on stage in Las Vegas due to heat exhaustion and dehydration, forcing multiple show cancellations. His life has been a storm: poverty, abuse, genius, drugs, spiritual quests, fame, betrayal, heartbreak, rebirth, but through all of it, his guitar remained the one truth he could always trust. The sound of survival. The sound of a child who carried a secret for 50 years and finally set it free. Rowan never chased the spotlight. The spotlight chased him, and as the world demanded more Mr. Bean, more episodes, more movies, more interviews, Rowan felt something inside him slipping away. Not his talent, not his passion, his identity. People didn't see Rowan Atkinson anymore. They only saw the face he created. The raised eyebrow, confused stare. The silent chaos that made millions laugh. Became a prisoner of his own genius. There were moments, quiet ones, when he sat alone in his house, the whole world asleep outside, and he wondered, will they ever understand that I'm not him? Because Mr. Bean was eternal, ageless, limitless, but Rowan was human, and his humanity was getting heavy. He tried to hide it, but his friends saw the change, the exhaustion, the pressure, the fear that one day he wouldn't be able to perform at the level people demanded from him. Years passed, and the fame grew louder than his own thoughts. Then, something shifted. Rowan's daughter once asked him a simple question: why don't you smile in photos? You make everyone laugh, except yourself. It hit him harder than any stunt he ever performed. All his life he chased perfection in silence, every gesture calculated, every blink timed, every movement rehearsed until it looked effortless. But perfection is a lonely companion. Rohan realized he didn't want to be perfect anymore. He wanted to be present. He wanted to speak not as a character, not as a performer, but as himself. Slowly, quietly, he stepped back from the chaos. Not disappearing, not retiring, just choosing peace over noise. And something beautiful happened. He learned to live without fear of the stutter. He learned to enjoy conversations, even the difficult ones. He learned that he didn't need Mr. Bean to be loved. Because, in the end, the world didn't love him because he was silent. World loved him because he was honest. Man who turned pain into laughter. A man who turned silence into art. Man who proved that you can be broken in one place and brilliant in another. And Rowan Atkinson, the boy who once hid from speaking, became one of the greatest storytellers in human history. Without saying a single word, but even after everything he achieved, the awards, the global fame, the millions of people whose lives he touched, and still carried one quiet truth inside him. He never expected to be here. He never expected to change. Comedy. He never expected to make history. He never expected to become a symbol of joy for people who had none. Was just a boy who wanted to hide from the world, a boy who feared his own voice, a boy who found safety behind a character he created in a moment of desperation. And yet, the world found healing in that character. People who never laughed found laughter. People who were lonely felt less alone. People who struggled with their own imperfections saw beauty in his. Rowan didn't just entertain audiences, he gave them permission to be awkward, to be silly, to be imperfect, to be themselves without apology. That was his real genius. He made people feel human again. Years later, when he was asked why Mr. Bean connected so deeply across the planet, why children in Japan, families in Brazil, elders in Africa all laughed the same way, Rowan answered with something softly profound, because he reminds us of the child we were, and the child we lost, behind all the chaos, all the clumsiness, all the absurdity. Mr. Bean carried innocence. He wasn't mean, he wasn't cruel, he didn't judge, he simply existed in his own strange world, trying his best, stumbling through life with a kind of fragile authenticity the modern world had forgotten. And in doing so, he touched a part of the human heart words could never reach. But Rohan knew this magic couldn't last forever. He knew that every character has a lifespan. Every creation, no matter how beloved, must eventually rest. One day, during a quiet moment after filming, he looked at the mirror in his dressing room. The same mirror where, for decades, he transformed into Mr. Bean. The same mirror where he practiced every blink, every twitch, every sideways glance. For the first time, he didn't recognize the man staring back. Not because he changed, but because he finally saw the cost. A lifetime of holding the world on his shoulders. A lifetime of hiding his fears behind a silent smile. A lifetime of being two people at once. He whispered to himself, "It's time, not an ending. Not a goodbye, just a release, a promise that he no longer had to carry the weight of a character who became larger than life." He walked away from the mirror with a strange sense of peace, a kind of peace he hadn't felt since childhood. Because Rowan finally understood something. The world didn't love him because of Mr. Bean. They loved Mr. Bean because of him. His heart, his soul. His pain, his brilliance. He didn't need the character anymore. The world already knew the man. In the years that followed, Rowan stepped into a quieter life. A life where he could walk through a park without cameras. A life where he could sit in a cafe and simply be another face in the crowd. A life where silence wasn't an enemy, but a friend. He spent more time with his family, especially his children, who never saw him as a legend, just a father, just a man who loved cars, who loved tinkering with engines late into the night, a man who laughed softly at their jokes and encouraged their dreams with genuine pride. And for the first time in decades, Rowan felt something he had never felt at the height of fame. He felt whole. He didn't need applause to feel alive. He didn't need studio lights to feel seen. He didn't need to hide behind a character to feel understood. He had earned peace, not through fame, not through money, but through a lifetime of vulnerability that the world never saw. And yet, life wasn't done testing him. One day, while driving his beloved McLaren F1, a car he adored like a piece of his own soul, Rowan lost control. The crash was violent, unforgiving, a moment that could have ended everything. When rescuers pulled him from the wreckage, they were shocked he was alive, shocked he could even open his eyes, shocked he could speak. But the first words he whispered were not about pain, not about fear. He asked, "Is the car all right?" It was such a Rowan thing to say, a strange, beautiful reminder of his childlike wonder, his love for machines, his quiet bond with the simple joys that fame could never give him. The accident changed him, not because he almost died, but because he realized how deeply he wanted to keep living, not as a character, not as an icon, as himself. After recovering, he returned to acting, but on his own terms. No more pressure, no more noise. He chose roles that challenged him, stories that mattered to him, projects that allowed him to finally speak in his own voice. And the world saw something unexpected. Rowan Atkinson wasn't just a silent comedian. He was a remarkable actor, a storyteller with depth, a man whose emotional range went far beyond physical comedy. Slowly, the world began to separate the two, Mr. Bean and Rowan. Different, beautiful in their own ways, each carrying a part of the other. But there was one moment, one quiet, private moment that explained everything Rowan had lived for. At a charity event, a young boy with a severe stutter approached him. He couldn't speak. He tried, but the words tangled and broke. The boy's mother leaned down and whispered, "He practices faces in the mirror every night because he wants to be like Mr. Bean. He says that when he acts, the stutter goes away." Rohan knelt down, looked into the boy's eyes, and without saying a word, he made a face, a silly, ridiculous, perfectly timed face. The boy burst into laughter, pure, honest laughter. And for a moment, a small, fragile, powerful moment, saw himself, the boy he once was, the fear he once carried, the pain he once hid. He understood then, fully and finally, why he was given this life, why he was given this gift. Not to be famous, not to be remembered, but to show others that even the quietest soul, the shyest voice, the most broken heart, can change the world in the loudest way. The screen slowly fades into a dimly lit room. A single lamp, a quiet evening, Rowan sitting by a window, looking out at the world he once feared, the world he eventually conquered, the world he learned to love. No makeup. No costume, no exaggerated expressions, just Rowan Atkinson, gentle, unguarded. His voice is soft, almost a whisper, carrying the weight of everything he's lived through. I never wanted to be the center of attention, he says. I just wanted to hide somewhere, where the world couldn't hear me struggle. He pauses, and somehow, that hiding place became the thing that made the world hear me the loudest. He looks down at his hands that crafted a character known by billions. Hands that shook with fear as a child. Hands that shaped a lifetime of laughter. What Mr. Bean gave me, Rowan continues, was not fame. It was freedom. Freedom from the voice I didn't have. He looks up, and for a moment, his eyes carry the same spark thought made the world fall in love with his silent character. But the truth is, I needed to let him go so I could find my own voice. The camera slowly pulls back. Soft music rises, gentle, nostalgic, like the sound of a memory trying not to fade. Images appear. Rowan, on a small stage in his youth. Rowan, making a room full of students erupt in laughter. Rowan, in the early days of Mr. Bean, shaping the character with precise movements. Rowan hiding behind a door backstage, calming himself before a speech. Rowan standing beside his children, smiling with a softness the world rarely sees. Rowan walking through a park, alone but peaceful. Rowan laughing quietly with old friends. Then the final image. A mirror. Empty. No costume. No character. Just a reflection of a man who survived himself. Rowan's voice returns one last time. If there is anything I want people to remember, it's that you don't need a loud voice to be heard, you don't need perfection to be loved, and you don't need to be someone else to matter. A soft smile touches his face. Not a Bean smile. Not a performance. A real smile. A quiet one. The kind he earned. After a lifetime of hiding, being yourself, he says gently, is the most powerful thing I ever learned, and the hardest thing I ever did. The screen fades to black. Silence. Then the sound of distant laughter's off to warm, familiar, the echo of a character that will live forever, because the man who created him finally learned how to live too.